there's not very few people that could talk me into leaving a golf course or leaving fishing to do something like this, but Jeremy is one of them. So when Jeremy reached out and said, hey, Alan, would you mind coming and sharing some thoughts and experiences, I said I'd be glad to. But as I go through this, it's really important to me, you know, a couple of things. One is that I had the absolute privilege of leading an organization of brilliant, hardworking people. And sometimes good management is managing to stay the heck out of the way. And I think that's what I did. I provided some resources, maybe occasionally helped with some direction, but it was really just empowering great people to do great things and embracing this technology. And I should share that I have reviewed my slides that I'll share today with senior leadership at Weyerhaeuser, so they're aware of the information that I'm going to provide. So, not quite 45 years, though when you work in the wood products industry, they actually count 3 years for every one. So I think I actually had about 125 years in the industry. And about the first dozen years of my career, I worked with Procter & Gamble, just a really good company. And the last 30 years, I had the privilege of working with Weyerhaeuser. Have worked all over North America in a number of different states, in a couple of different countries. And as I look back on it, I realized I just could never hold a job, so they just kept moving me around. So I was a plant manager at 3 different facilities, one in Georgia, one in North Carolina, one in Washington. And then I held various leadership roles, different geographies, different countries, and that sort of thing in my career. And I think that as I reflect back on it, there were 3 things that I cared about. I cared about safety because I think as a leader, I have the moral responsibility to lead a safe organization. I cared about reliability because I think it complements world-class safety. And I really cared about developing people because there's no way I can achieve excellence in either safety or reliability unless I'm serious about developing people. So we had been in the vibration space for a number of years. And so my paradigm was, though, it was all internal. That's how you manage vibration sensing. And it worked. And what I saw, however, was to do an in-house effort well, it requires significant training and key resources. And then when we were doing it, similar to what Larry was talking about, we were largely route-based. And what we found is things failed in between our routes. And so I'm thinking, maybe there's something we need to be doing differently. And that really, the use of this technology is, and more importantly, how effective it is, was driven by leadership interest and knowledge, as well as the technicians that you had doing the work. And that varied across our plants. And the other thing that I did not include in this slide originally was, for a number of years, we had the mindset that in terms of maintenance maturity, to think about embracing vibration technology, you had to be fairly advanced. And so we were actually fairly prescriptive in terms of where we would allow maintenance technology or vibration sensing to be used, and it had to be in our better facilities. Okay. So what we, a little bit of redundancy here is what we were doing is you can targeting a downtime elimination. It worked well. The other thing that we used it for was reducing infant mortality in terms of new equipment installation. And when done correctly, that can help. And we've kind of talked about these already, but it's in any journey, if you don't have leadership support, it's really a formula for failure. So a big part of what we've done in the last 5 years, I'm going to speak to this in some subsequent slides, is really growing the maintenance knowledge of our leadership. And that's not just maintenance leadership, it's executive leadership as well as plant leadership and the criticality of maintenance. And developing the mindset that maintenance is not a cost, but it's an investment. And as you might expect, and I think I heard Suzanne talk about this, is when you turn, Weyerhaeuser owns 12 million acres, has 35 manufacturing facilities, and when you turn 35 manufacturing facilities loose, you get 35 different kind of reports, and we weren't standardized. And again, we were very dependent on a loss of key resources. So I first got exposed to KCF in the summer of 2017. And I had gone through, I was assigned a new role and was basically managing the Eastern region facilities for Weyerhaeuser across all our manufacturing disciplines. And I was traveling to our facility in Greenville, North Carolina, not South Carolina. And our maintenance manager at the time, Joey Pate, had begun to use KCF technology kind of on a trial basis about 6 months earlier. And he was plumb excited. You know, and most, at least at Weyerhaeuser, most maintenance guys are pretty stoic. They don't get excited about a whole lot. You know, they're kind of salt of the earth, kind of even keel. But he was just really excited. And so talk to me about it, Joey. And fortunately, he dumbed it down enough so that I understood. And I said, okay, hey, there's something here. And so what are you doing with it? And they were preventing downtime. Now, this was in a certain area of the mill, and I guess the fancy thing to do, they had done a critical asset review. But in my experience in manufacturing, there's always a part of your plant that I kind of call the Bermuda Triangle. It's because when something goes down in that piece of equipment or those pieces of equipment, you lose a whole shift. And that's a disappointing day when you lose a whole shift. It's disappointing for everybody. And so KCF was helping us sail the Bermuda Triangle. That's how I like to think about it. So what we began to do is we began to use KCF, but what they had at Greenville was they had a champion. They had a technician that got it and got it passionately, okay? And he was excited about it as much as Joey was. They were doing the weekly data reviews. Data was being categorized into 3 alarm levels. We were avoiding downtime, and we began to see the impact that it was having at Greenville. And I saw it enough that we began to move it into other plants, okay? So as a lot of organizations go through, we decided it was time to reinvent ourselves at Weyerhaeuser. And we went from a geographic structure where I had responsibilities for all the mills in the geography to a product line structure. And I had the privilege of leading our panels division, 9 mills across all of North America. Okay, and so that was a change that happened. But the thing that very quickly caught my eye when I became responsible for the panels division was, well, dadgum, they run 24/7, 365 days a week. So when you go down, there's no catch-up. So you better not go down. And so lumber mills, which is where I had been spending a lot of my time prior to that, typically run an 80 to 100-hour schedule. So going down, you try to avoid it, but if you do go down and you have the resources, you can run overtime and catch up. So at this point, I'm beginning to think to myself, well, preventive maintenance is not going to work in a situation where we're running literally 24/7, 365 days a week. And so in an OSB mill, we basically take the mill down 8 to 12 hours every 2 weeks and run the rest of the time. And then we have an annual maintenance outage that's typically the length of which is determined by the capital projects that you're installing. So again, we're beginning to think about how do we transition from preventive to predictive maintenance. So the external factors within the company that were happening, we had a change in executive leadership, and the gentleman who was my boss at the time, had an extensive maintenance background. He's forgotten more about maintenance than I know. But there's really something special when you have an executive leader who gets it when you're trying to do something in the maintenance space, okay? The other thing, and I think a couple of our leaders have talked about this, is that we saw was labor availability and labor skill was decreasing. Now, when you convert wood products, or when you manufacture wood products, you're essentially converting a raw material, trees, into a finished product, whatever it is. But what you recognize is trees don't grow in urban areas. Trees grow in the forests. And so most of our manufacturing facilities are in small towns, largely in the southeast, the northwest, and Canada. And so maintenance skill and maintenance availability was a pronounced problem. And so we began to connect the dots that as we embrace more and more predictive maintenance, and we embrace more and more vibration technology, it's almost like you're hiring millwrights. If you have enough sensors, it actually is, I think, a millwright equivalent. And then we also had a fair amount of myself and others retiring from the company. So we're getting more and more interested in KCF. And then I was fortunate enough to attend the last seminar that was held in this building. And in one of the breakouts, and Lauren, I don't know if you're in the audience this afternoon, a couple of us had come up. Steve Cutlip, who is our OSB manufacturing director now, was here. I think James, you may have been here. John, I don't know if you made that trip with us. We listened to Lauren talk about what he was doing in a nuclear power plant as the maintenance leader of a nuclear power plant. And when I think back on the last 5 years of my career and think about things that had me sit down in my seat and go, oh my goodness, that's the cleaned up version, y'all. What Lauren had the audacity to say is vibration monitoring is not about downtime, it's about operating in a precision state. And that rocked my world because all I was trying to do, or all I was allowing myself to think about, was reducing downtime. But Lauren was right. This is really what you're after when it comes to vibration sensing and other forms of predictive maintenance. And so we got serious, we got deliberate about looking at our assets and driving us towards operating more and more in a defined precision state. So, how do we do it? Well, we did two sets of champions, okay? We needed a business champion, okay? And that's a guy that's been on the shop floor, has turned the wrenches, but can not only talk to millwrights, but can talk to people like myself, help us understand it. And that gentleman for Weyerhaeuser, at least in the panels division, was a gentleman named Keith Staten, okay? The other thing that you need is, and I left it off here, and that was a mistake, you need mill champions, okay? You need young men or women that understand the technology, can talk to the folks at KCF, understand all the slides that we've seen today, and can take someone like myself, crazy ideas, and make them work. And so we've got an example of that today. John Isabel from our Sutton Mill manufacturing facility. And that combination of a business resource coordinating activity across a 9-mill set and then mill champions working together to grow and accelerate what we did was kind of our secret sauce. We exposed leadership to vibration wins. And I think I heard Ben say it earlier. We've never installed this technology and not found something that needed work, okay? So we were getting our leadership exposed to the wins. And then the other thing that we did is I needed a bell cow, okay? And for those of you that don't know what a bell cow is, find somebody you know who worked on a farm or grew up on a farm and ask them, what was he talking about when he mentioned a bell cow? Well, my bell cow was the Sutton, West Virginia facility, okay? Because Alan can say it and promise it's going to work, and it carries information, okay? When the maintenance leadership at Sutton talks about what KCF implementation is doing, it brings credibility, okay? And we had a champion in our leadership at Sutton, in our maintenance organization at Sutton, and they were doing exciting things with KCF, and they brought the rest of the organization along. You've got to have a structure that supports advancing the technology. So prior to this, we were transitioning from preventive to predictive maintenance. In most of our mills, we now have predictive maintenance teams. So they're part of the technical organization, part of the maintenance organization, but they're full-time working on all aspects of predictive maintenance. This stuff ain't free, okay? But it's an investment. It's not a cost. And fortunately, I was in a position where I got to write the checks, and we did, and we accelerated our implementation. And then one of the things that the organization would tell you is they knew this was very important to myself only because it was fun to listen to people's success stories. And so what we did is we had a monthly call of all of our maintenance superintendents, our plant managers, and then our predictive maintenance technicians talking about what they had learned and what they had found. And it was just fun. That was my favorite call in the month. So, you need championship, you need leadership support, you got to spend a little bit of money, and then just get after it. So, now obviously, I'm not at liberty to share specifics, and I think everybody understands that. But I can tell you we did reduce downtime, and we did improve OEE, okay? We saw a significant increase in planned maintenance versus break-in maintenance, and we increased the percentage of time we were operating in a precision state, okay? Okay, rolling out across the company. So I had 9 facilities that I was responsible for. We have parallel efforts in our engineered wood products group that has 7 facilities, in our lumber organization that has 18, okay? But it takes work and it takes champions. And so at that level, it was myself, my counterpart in lumber, my counterpart in engineered wood. We were on board. We wanted this to work. There's going to be competing priorities. Maturity of reliability systems will be varied, and people's past experiences with vibration sensing will be different, okay? That's all noise. That's all it is just noise. And so you've got to be willing to drive through that. And then once people begin to see the successes, acceptance happens very quickly. So, this is... Early on in my career, I had, this is when I was on the floor, one of the maintenance guys that I worked with actually thought of cars as an art form. And he was dead serious. He's also the guy that introduced me to NASCAR, which I've never forgiven him for that, because when I think about, well, it's not wasted hours. It's a lot of good races. But I enjoy a good NASCAR race. But this comes from a car manufacturer. Strive for perfection in everything. Take the best that exists and make it better. Isn't that what we're trying to do with KCF technology? If it doesn't exist, create it. And if we could only accept nothing nearly right or good enough. Just think about what a manufacturing industry we could be. So the gentleman that said this said it in 1908. His name was Sir Henry Royce. And there was a time Rolls-Royce was the standard of excellence in auto manufacturing. But I have kind of followed this as what we're trying to do in manufacturing at Weyerhaeuser for the 30 years that I was there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. Powerful. So many good lessons there. We heard from Alan about navigating the Bermuda Triangle.
Sure.
Celebrating success stories, precision operation and precision maintenance. We even heard about cows. We did it all. And thank you for that. I guess the thought that was going through my head, and even when we were talking last night about your presentation today, is 41 years in industry. You've driven this next level digital Industry 4.0 project. For the next level of leadership that's stepping in this era, what's the single most important piece of advice that you would offer them on how to drive this transformation successfully?
The four most powerful words in the English language are, what do you think? And when you have a sincere conversation with a craftsperson or a mill leader or a mill manager, and you remember that good communication starts with the excellence in listening, you can drive any change that you want. And I learned that from a gentleman named Phil Lattis when I was working in Canada in 1987. What do you think? And then the good Lord gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Shut up and listen.
Let's thank Alan. Very nice. Thank you very much.